Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to have Weaver Ellard, the co-founder and CEO of Dodeka Digital. This is a data-first marketing agency dedicated to helping brands drive inbound revenue through scalable, repeatable marketing processes. With a background that spans from venture capital to leading marketing teams for Fortune 500 companies, Weaver brings a wealth of experience to the table. Weaver, welcome to Founders Future.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm excited to dive in. I always like to start from the beginning. So take us back on a journey to before you started the company. What were you doing at that time, and what was the motivation behind starting Dodeka?
Yeah. So I've been on the client side of marketing for my whole career. You mentioned I started Fortune 500, then I was at a kind of a startup unicorn based out of Atlanta, like tech company. And then I was in the venture space with a bunch of early stage startups. And at all stops, I used marketing agencies or hired marketing agencies along the way. And always had a passion for entrepreneurship and thought I wanted to be like the right hand guy to like a CEO or founder. Progressively went smaller business and but yeah, in hiring agencies, always got frustrated. I felt like we probably hired 30 agencies, and there was one or two that we used that I felt like were really like experts in what they did, and the rest I felt like we were just getting like overcharged or a lot of like awesome pitches and then really weak delivery. And so when I was in the venture space and helping all these startups, a lot of what we were doing for them was building like small kind of in-house agencies that were helping them grow and just realizing like the impact that marketing could have on small businesses and especially startups, and just feel like there's a major gap in like good agencies out there.
Yeah.
That was what kind of like ended up leading to me deciding to take the leap, which I can dive into more. But to context like what I was doing before.
Yeah, definitely. Walk me through when you were first got into when you were because you said you had the entrepreneur spirit, that little itch, hey, start my own company. There's always a mental conversation going, should I not? Should I do it? What were some of the mental challenges that you had to overcome to even starting and getting going in the first place?
Yeah, I think for me is I'm fairly risk adverse as a person, so I think that was part of
Mm,
it. Of just like part of maybe why my original desire was to be the right hand to another entrepreneur. Was I think I'm just more play it safe, a little bit more of an operator, less of a visionary in that sense. And so that was part of why where I had the hesitation. And then I think um, as I was working with a lot of other earlier stage founders and seeing a lot of them like do great things or make mistakes and watching their process, getting to help coach some here and there, I think that also just instilled a lot more confidence in me of, okay, I don't think this is as intimidating or as difficult as I originally thought
yeah,
it might be. Just being in the trenches with them, like definitely gave me some of that extra like courage. I think also like climbing the corporate ladder in a sense and being blessed in my career to do fairly well on that side of the house. That also was kind of like starting to put kind of the golden handcuffs on me, where I felt like I've already worked this hard to like, get this far. I don't know if I want to like restart and build something new. So I think that definitely was like a big tension along the way before I decided to make the leap. Was like, I don't know if I want to turn away from everything that I had built up to that point.
yeah. Was there like a moment in time? Because a lot of people get those golden handcuffs and they never ever get unshackled in a sense. So what was the turning point that made you be like, you know what? It's a great gig, making great money, I'm assuming, but I still got to take the sleep.
Yeah, I think for me, it ultimately came down to like culture and wanting to build something that I was like proud of in that sense. I think
Mm,
financial, we're good on the venture side. Traditionally, venture can be a little bit more cutthroat, a lot of churn, a lot of aggressiveness in that sense. And so things were going relatively well. But I think that side of it, of just like seeing the way people were getting treated in that environment, seeing the way that was happening, I was like, hey, I want to build a culture and a team that I'm proud of, build an agency that like services clients in a way that I feel like it is of high character and cares a little bit more about the client than just the profit. And I think that it was more of like a personal kind of value based decision at that point. And that was like kind of the final breaking point where I was like, I think I could at least build a culture I'm more proud of. I think I could make the finances work. And that was like really the tipping point of like me deciding if it was worth it. And then that timing in my personal life, we just found out we were about to have our second kid. And so I had some good advisors in my life who were basically like, hey, if you don't do it now, like it's never going to get easier and you're probably never going to do it. So, uh, now or never. And that was really like the push I needed to decide, I think I'll regret if I get 10 years from now and never gave it a shot.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great question that anybody could ask. Have you ever heard of the rocking chair test? Where it's you envision yourself, you're 80, you're chilling on a rocking chair, and you're just thinking back to your life. And I heard this from a podcast, and he was basically saying anytime he's faced with a difficult decision in life, he tries to look at it from that lens. The 80-year-old version of myself, how is he going to look at this? And is he going to, and most of the times when you talk to people that are on their deathbed, they regret the things that they didn't do more than the things they did do, the risks they didn't
Mhm.
take. So I love that. Now, let's shift a little bit over to your business today. Help the listeners understand who is your ideal customer, who do you love to work with, and then how do you guys actually work with them? What are the different offers and services that you provide?
Yeah, we mostly work with B2B technology companies. A lot of times the earlier stage usually have like Series A or Series B. Usually they're over 1 million in revenue, so they're not like pre-revenue, but usually fairly early. And then they often have less than 10 marketers, which is usually people who are like building out their marketing team, looking to start to learn how to drive inbound revenue or drive revenue through marketing, and they are on the B2B tech side. So we do two main things. Demand gen, or like growth marketing, is a really big part of our offerings, and was originally about like half of our business, and now it's probably 80% of what we do is Google ads, paid social ads, but then also like content marketing, SEO, like a little bit more holistic demand gen, where it's not just like a channel, but a combo of them. And then the other part of our business is website and advertise, or website builds. About half of our team is designers, so we're very like design centric in the way that we think about marketing. And I think design is a super important part of effective performance marketing. My co-founder is a designer by trade, and so that's why we're built in that way. Yeah, so we offer demand gen retainers as like our primary offering. We have a couple of different sizes, and in those we operate as a fractional marketing team is kind of how we position it. So
Mm,
you're not just paying for like Google ads for that month. If one
yeah,
month we're running Google ads and the next month you're going to go to a trade show and need a booth design, like we can shift focus, do some booth design work for you, and focus a little less on Google ads that month. So a little bit of like flexibility in how we operate in that sense.
got it. So it's not one single vertical. We'll run your Google ads or we'll run your Facebook ads. We're coming here. We're generating demand. We're helping you grow, get more lead flow in through the door. How long do you typically work with your clients?
Yeah, so I went full time just over a year ago, and so far we've had
That's
one client churn in that period. I would say for all of them, it's six to 12 months so far. Pretty
Yep.
much how long we've had all the clients, and pretty much everyone's stuck with us. Hopefully, a couple of years would be the average life cycle, but
Yeah.
we anticipate somewhere between 12 to 18 months being like the sweet spot to help folks get off the ground and get the right foundation.
Got it. Is there like a typical client journey that you see so you have a very clearly defined ICP, which I love. You got the B2B tech companies, 1 million plus, generally speaking, less than 10 marketers, generally speaking. Is there like a goal with working with you guys? Hey, we're gonna get them to this specific point, and then eventually they're gonna run with it, or you can work with them indefinitely in a sense, really?
Yeah, I think for a lot of our clients, for some of them, it's like we're helping them get their demand gen stood up, helping them get efficient so they can eventually afford an in-house team or further build out their in-house team.
Got
Even
it.
in those scenarios, I think a lot of them kind of plan to build out certain parts of the in-house team and then still augment with our team. Like maybe they won't hire designers, and so they'll plug in our design thinking on top of if they hire a paid media person, or vice versa. But in a lot of cases, what we found is they originally start with that in mind, and then we get a good rhythm. They feel like we're operating kind of like an in-house team, and so they decide, hey, we're just going to put off hiring for a while and just like use you guys as our marketing team. So yeah, we'll see like how replicable that is over time. Like that's part of our how we're growing our business model. It's a lot with like that kind of growth in mind. But yeah, right now it's either we start as their whole team and then we augment later on, or we're just like indefinitely helping run the marketing side of the house for them.
Yeah. Do you find that could present issues with scale in terms of just handling everything for them?
Yeah, for sure. And I think with scope creep too, like I think something that I really disliked about agencies is like every little change we wanted to do, we did a new scope. So something part of the like fractional marketing team model, the benefit of it to the client is we try to avoid changing scope. We try to avoid like adjusting that. I think on the downside of that from an operator side is it can be really hard to draw that line of how much do we allow, how much extra work do we take on, and how do we kind of protect ourselves in that sense. So we're still defining all of that, but I think the way that we're planning and continuing to address that and starting to work relatively well at this stage is like we're broken up into pods. So we're kind of have
Mm,
like a account manager, an ad person, and a designer in each pod, and each pod will have a set number of accounts. And in that way, it still feels kind of like the boutique agency, like they know who their people are that they're working with. And like a
Yep.
bunch of little agencies inside of our agency. And so that's our way of combating that in the long run, is allowing us to feel boutique even as we like do
Yeah.
scale to a larger number of clients.
100%. It sounds like you've put the right or putting the right fulfillment models in place to be able to scale while still making sure that the services are very effective for the clients that you work with. Walk me
That's the
through
goal.
your lead gen. How do you actually generate leads for your business?
Yeah, it's been very heavy on like word of mouth and on referrals. I do a decent amount of posting on LinkedIn, like at least once or twice a week. And that's also started to bring in a good amount of business of just connections, like second degree connections, kind of seeing those posts or liking those posts. A lot of it talks about like our fractional agency model or just like conversion rate optimization, kind of
Yeah,
just like thought leadership in our space. Yeah, so that's been enough to get us to where we're at currently. We have done a little bit of like cold outbound on LinkedIn, and that worked relatively well. As we're more focused, right, like we do pretty high ticket sales, and so lower volume of clients. And so, yeah, we're growing at the pace that I would want to grow right now. So we're not focusing too heavily on sales. Obviously, we know the importance of needing a pipeline in case churn does inevitably happen and all of that. So as we build out this pod structure and I step a little bit further out of the day-to-day operations, then I'll dive in a little bit deeper on like more detailed sales process or more predictable sales process. But yeah, right now it's mostly word of mouth referrals, and we have a little bit of structure behind like a warm intro playbook is what we call it, that helps us like find the second degree connections and build a little bit of a system around that.
for sure. So if leads and sales aren't the primary focus, what would be the primary focus? Building the pod structure, or is there anything else that you would add into that?
Yeah, I think right now it's just building the right team, like hiring the right people, and then building the right deliver like fulfillment, just like making sure that we have that in a predictable place. Like we built out a lot of SOPs, built out our way that we want to operate and how we can like take this same level of quality and scale it into the multiple pods. So that's where our big focus is for at least the next like month or two, I would say. We have several new hires starting and creating this second pod. So as soon as we get through that, then we'll kind of shift. At least I'll shift focus back more to the sales side as delivery
For
kind of
sure.
hopefully smooths out.
When you think into the future, have you thought of what the go-to-market strategy would be in a sense of just getting more predictable leads in through the door?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it will continue to be focused on more warm intros and that kind of playbook. I don't know if that's like infinitely scalable, but I think at least for the next 2 years, probably, I think based on our revenue goal, like that should be a pretty good way for us to get to those. We will likely bring on sales at some point or bring on someone to help run maybe a little bit more like cold outbound or maybe drink a little of our own Kool-Aid and do some paid media as a way to drive inbound leads as well. So those are a couple of avenues we're considering.
It's always interesting because I talk to a lot of agencies and we've worked with a lot of agencies. There's always some sort of, I don't know if resistance isn't the right word or hesitancy towards running ads. Like you were
Yeah.
saying, drinking your own Kool-Aid. So what has been the thing that preventing you from doing that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like how saturated the space is in the sense of because we are advertising again, like because our competitors are other advertising agencies or folks who do advertising, like naturally it's going to be a lot of people's kind of first channel or first path. And so I think I know that our target market is getting fairly blown up with either cold outreach or ads from people just like us. So either it means that like we have to really differentiate and have ads that speak to them and resonate a little bit more personalized, or we just get them through a different channel that like feels a little less pushy. And I'm not a huge fan of like cold outreach or that style of sales anyway. And so I like more of the relational, like have someone make an intro. Obviously, everyone like would prefer that, but I think we've seen good success there just with like a little bit of structure. And so I'm more prone to run that down. I think that'll be a better return on our time and initial effort, and just like we'll get people in a better state of mind. Like I think if someone's responding to an ad, oftentimes I've also heard from other agencies that like the kind of clients are not always as good for various reasons I can go into. But yeah, that's a little bit like why the hesitancy to go that path.
Fair. What does the warm intro process look like from like a practical, tactical perspective?
Yeah, it's really just starting, and we use Sales Nav within LinkedIn, and then we use this other thing called Happenstance. But basically, I just pull all of my contacts who fit our ICP, just like throw those filters on top, and then look at the ones that like I actually really know. And for now, it's just been reaching out and being like, "Hey, just started this business. Would love to pick your brain on it. See if you like have any ideas." And that's pretty genuine. Like we're not usually it's not much of a pitch. It's just like,
Yeah.
"Here's what I'm building. Do you ever use agencies? Would you like what should I do differently?" And a lot of times what that will lead to is they'll either be like, "Hey, actually, we could use someone like you," or "Hey, I know some other people who might need a good agency, and then they'll make an intro. So that's phase one of it. The other phase is I'll look up secondary connections who fit my criteria, and then look if there's any people that we have mutual, like any of our mutual connections or people that I feel comfortable being like, hey, notice this person. Would you mind like making a quick intro? Think we could help them with demand gen kind of stuff. Yeah, and that's basically the playbook. And
Fair
we're
enough.
maybe like 10% through kind of our connections, and then as we get new clients, like the potential connections are always growing. Obviously, now the network and all of that, it's always kind of an ever growing pool.
Yeah. Definitely a lot more difficult to build out than just running ads, but it's it could also be a very powerful system if built out correctly, right?
Yeah, definitely like more upfront work, I would say, but I think a much higher like response rate and the much
Mm,
like greater, like our close rate is very high on those.
yeah.
And I would imagine that would be much lower if we were running ads.
What does your sales process look like? So once a lead does come in, what are the steps they go through for them to become a client?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's probably a 2 call process for the most part. When they come in, I'll do before our first call, like a typical discovery call, but we'll do a good bit of research on like their website. We'll look at through some third party tools, just figure out like who are their competitors, what are they doing marketing wise from what we can tell. So we'll come into the call with some initial like pointed questions and recommendations, and then figure out what their goals are, figure out some of their data points. And then based on that, we'll then send over, usually just with a loom, we'll send a follow up. Here's our proposal of how we could partner with you guys. Here's the potential results. Sometimes, depending on the relationship, we'll just like present that on a second call. But a lot of times, it'll just be via loom. And then if they're interested, a lot of times they'll just, I guess it'll just be that one call. They'll be like, we're interested. We'll send them a scope of work. They'll sign and we'll go get a kickoff call. But if we're presenting them, then there'll be a second call and we'll walk through the findings. And then, yeah, usually it's a pretty, maybe not quick, but it's usually a yes or no. There's not a lot of debating or negotiating. We're, like I said, relatively high price. So it's like they either believe in that and want to get in and don't care as much about the price, or they're like, hey, it's not what we need right now. And it's pretty simple.
Are you running the sales?
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, it's pretty much just me.
You enjoy it?
Founder of, yeah. I would say it's something that another reason maybe that I didn't mention I haven't found the business is I've avoided sales my whole career pretty aggressively. At this stage, I like it. I think I'm selling something I believe in, obviously, and so it feels less salesy and more just like helping people with marketing and helping consult a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely not my favorite part of running the business, but it's pushing me. I'm learning a lot through it for sure.
For sure. Do you find that it can maybe take away some time from other things that you would rather be doing?
Yeah, for sure. I think my stance on that is, especially in our stage of growth or like an early stage business, I think a founder should there's almost no reason not for this to exist, I think, but I think a founder should almost always spend like 50% of their time or so on sales.
Yep.
Like I mentioned earlier, it's not where my time is right now because our like fulfillment I'm a little more focused on at the moment. But yeah, I think there'll become a stage, like I said, when I'll want to either work with an agency or pull in a salesperson where that maybe shouldn't be the bulk of my time. But at our stage of growth, I think it should probably be the bulk of my time.
Fair enough. It always helps when you're learning from the trenches, because then when you bring people in, you actually have had those conversations in the past. So it's easier to train. When you think of your vision and where you want to take the company, you mentioned some revenue targets over the next 1-2 years. What are those targets? What are your top priorities? Anything that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, our goal for this year was to hit 1 million in just like total revenue or booked revenue. And as a couple weeks ago, we just hit 1 million in ARR, like run rate. So that's super exciting and definitely puts us like ahead of pace of our initial goals, or like reassessing a couple of our future goals. But I would say probably 2 years from now, our goal would be to be closer to the 5 million mark in ARR. And our mix is probably going to be 70-30 or 80-20 between recurring versus one time, because the websites are mostly one time revenue. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the simplest way to place our goals.
What are your top priorities to making that happen in terms of like actionable things?
Yeah, I think it's just scale right now of figuring out, can we replicate? Because I think the biggest barrier to that is just going to be obviously retention and then delivery, which are tightly aligned. So can we like take the magic that we found with a really small team and make sure we replicate that as we get a slightly larger team, and augment as much as we can with AI and automation to make those A players go a little bit farther. But yeah, I think that'll be like that is our big focus, is just, can we replicate this for the next, like we have about 12 retainer clients right now. So can we replicate that for the next 12? Yeah. And then if we can, I think our focus will shift more to the sales side.
I love that. I think it's a phenomenal thought process to have. a lot of people don't have a scalable fulfillment model off the get and they just try to scale, but it's the fulfillment model specific or itself is not scalable. So that dialed in is critical. What do you feel like are the biggest challenges you're facing as the founder?
Yeah, I think it's all just prioritization. And I think that's like pretty standard of any founder I've ever worked with. It's just like my the hardest part of my job is figuring out like where do I apply my time. And so I think especially because a lot of my in our particular offering, like a lot of what we offer is things that I have done or do in the past. And so a lot of me getting wiser with my time is like figuring out how to teach my team and like how to delegate and how to hand things off so that I'm less like in the weeds doing the things that I'm comfortable doing or the things that I enjoy doing and spend more time doing things that are best for the business or best for our
Yeah.
clients. I think that's been one of the bigger challenges for sure.
How do you navigate that? Do you have a specific process around prioritization or thought process, anything like that?
Yeah, I've been trying at least once a month. I'll kind of take an audit of my time and I kind of like block my calendar and then color code things so that I can just look back and see like what percentage of my time am I spending on like client calls versus like focus time versus like biz dev and outreach versus like internal one-on-ones and operations. And so that kind of like ongoing audit is a good like keeping me on
Yeah.
the right path because usually it's out of because I have like my ideal scenario and then I'll have the reality. And so usually just like looking at that and trying to course correct and figure out like if I spent way too much time in client calls, like how can I fix that for the next month and where do I pull back so that I can free up time for the areas I know I need to be focusing more.
I like that. You do that on a weekly basis.
I know it's both are monthly. Like I track it on a weekly basis and I like have it all there, but I probably look really closely at it on a monthly basis.
Nice. Even tracking it weekly, that's very good. I've done a 15-minute time tracker before where I would track every single 15 minutes for
Mhm.
7 days straight. And it gives you a lot of clarity, but doing that on a regular basis, I can imagine how helpful that is.
Yeah.
What's what's one tip if you were talking to new entrepreneurs looking to step into the agency space in 2025? What's one tip you would give them for being able to crush and to do very well?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing or something that's top of mind for me, I just going to post out about this today because I was thinking about it, but I think that a lot of people would say focus on AI or focus on like getting the best tools and systems and tech so that you can like scale and beat the other incumbent agencies out there. But I think it really just comes down to getting great talent. Like I think if you're starting an agency, like either you're a co-founder or a great marketer, or you are a great marketer and maybe one other great marketer that you're going to partner with. But I think like you have to have a couple of like great marketing brains and then you can use AI and you can use it to multiply yourself, multiply your team. But I think there's a lot of people right now like really focusing on the how can I automate everything? How can I like scale everything? And they're really just like scaling mediocre work. And so that would be my like my biggest recommendation is find someone who gets it and then figure out how to scale them.
I like that. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah, our website, dodekadigital.com. My name's fairly unique, so you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Weaver at Dodeka Digital as well. If you want to reach me on email, yeah, that's probably the best way to get in touch.
Awesome. So that wraps up another insightful episode of Founders Future. Weaver, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your time, your journey, your insights with us today. To our listeners, if you are inspired by today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're looking to scale your business and really enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to discover how we can support your growth journey. Until then, keep on climbing.